Hello, my name is Myra Tanksley, and I am recording this on December the 30th, 2017. And I'm wishing everybody a blessed new year. Hope they had a very Merry Jesus Bus. I am recording this audio video. There's no video to my audio videos. I say videos because they are uploaded to YouTube before I put them over to the Facebook pages that I have. So I call them video and audio. So I call them audio videos. But I'm recording this because my son is a victim of ongoing abuse, neglect, and exploitation by some very evil people in the world that even the Bible says these people exist. If you read the Bible, you will read about injustice and how God is angry with it and what he says about it. And it's throughout the Bible. It's in the Old Testament, it's in the New Testament, it's in Proverbs, it's in the Psalms, it's throughout the Bible. So God is very angry with injustice. And when we talk about injustice, or when he talks about injustice, he is not talking about the average Joe on the street. He is talking about people that work in the so-called legal system. I call it the illegal system. But he's talking about judges and magistrates and lawyers and court investigators and all of those people that work in concert in the illegal system. And me being a Christian, if God identifies it and says that things are in existence in this world, that's good enough for me. And that's why I had to tell one racist, nasty court investigator that worked for Franklin County probate court. I said, so don't try to sit up here. And I never talked to him face to face, but I left a message. I said, you people can't try to pretend that you don't do these things. I said, even God tells me as a Christian that reads his word that you people exist. This is what you do. And then he also talks about how angry he is with injustice and what he's going to do about it. I said, so don't try to sit up and pretend, because that's who he's talking about. He's not talking about people out in the street. He's talking about you people. So anyway, like I was saying, my son is a victim of abuse, neglect, exploitation. He's autistic. He is now 24 years old. He turns 25 in April of 2018. So this coming year, he'll be 25. I am an African-American single mother. I am an RN, been an RN since, I'm going to say, 31 years now. I'm outspoken about my son's abuse and neglect and exploitation, and for that, I had to get labeled as being a mother that escalates my son. Now, I threw the word racist in there, and so I'm going to talk about racism here just briefly, because that's the reason why I'm told that. I doubt if they're telling white parents, white mothers and fathers who are the parents of autistic individuals, that they're escalating their sons and daughters when they're having meltdowns or aggressive behavior, which could be physical or verbal. I know they don't tell white parents that, but they told this black mother that just because I was outspoken. And I'm still exposing them, which is another reason why they don't want me, the main reason why they don't want me to have contact with my son. And he and I have not been allowed to visit in over 2 years. The last time I actually visited with my son, or was allowed to visit with him, was March the 15th, 2015. The last time he was allowed to call me was May the 13th, 2017. And then the last time through my own efforts, I was allowed to, not allowed, but through my own efforts, I waited outside to see my son as he was coming out from the very tiny, small, little townhome they have that's in a terrible neighborhood. And I'll talk about that later, because it's just so much content. It's so much stuff. But I knew he was going to be coming out that day. And and I waited outside, and I got to see him. That was 3 months after he and I was allowed to have our last visit. So that was on July the 8th, 2015. So it's been over 2 years that I have seen my son. And I mean, there's no contact. And that's because of a racist, dirty, lying, unfit attorney by the name of Aaron Sanford, who now is with Nye Law Group. And he has not been allowed to call me since, like I said, May 13th, 2017, and we have not been allowed to have contact. And that's including holidays and birthdays, too. And that's why I said, now, this country can go down to the pits of hell. I'm not a patriot, but I'm not a rebel. I'm not going to burn the American flag and all that, but I won't stand up for it. I said, because it got to be right for me and my son and other people in this country. Because when you talk about people taking the knee and all that kind of stuff, they're looking at what the national anthem says. They're not just looking at it, well, I'm American, I got to respect the national anthem or the flag. And now, I'm not all into the national anthem, but I understand what they're doing because they're looking at what it actually says. But as far as the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm not going to stand up for it because I'm looking at what it says. I'm looking at the words that's in the Pledge of Allegiance. And so when you come to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and stuff, I can't say that because it's definitely not for my son. I said, he hasn't done anything to nobody. He's not a criminal, but his rights has been taken away from him, his family rights. But then me too as a victim. As a mother, I'm a victim in this. You think my son got life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness and justice, and I done seen him get assaulted with my own eyes, beaten. He has no family rights. He's been blamed for his disability. He's been abused and neglected. They're exploiting for federal funds. Now, does that look like some life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? I'm not going to say it. I think I'm just too old. I'm just not going to say it. I wouldn't even let it come out of my mouth. So he definitely doesn't have life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. But when I think about it as a mother, neither do I. Because my happiness, like any other mother or father that loves their child, their son and daughter, would be wanting to be with them and spend time with them and have companionship with them and take care of them. And that's been taken away from me for now. But as a Christian, I know God is going to make it right. Because it'll take God to get rid of Sanford and all these dirty, lying, racist, piece of injustice, government trash. And like I said, going back to the Bible, the book of Proverbs even talks about people like Sanford and them. It's in the book of Proverbs. It's in the 30th chapter, the 14th verse. And this is what it says, quote, "There are people who take cruel advantage of the poor and needy. That is the way they make their living," unquote. Like I said, the Bible is just full of references to unjust people. And that's not your people out in the street. That's these lawyers like Sanford, these judges, these courts, these agencies. They all work, and scratch each other's back. They all go along to get along, and they all work in concert. So that's who he's talking about. And that's why I describe them the way I describe them. And to me, they're just scum. Because when you read about injustice and how they take bribes, and the Bible even uses the words corrupt courts, and how God warns them about lying on the innocent in court and stuff. I mean, it's just full of injustice. I said, these people ain't nothing but government trash, So, and I'm not worried about slander, or they slander me, but nobody's going to accuse me of slander. Because when I said she's a liar, she lied on me 3 times. I can prove it because I'm an evidence girl. I don't like having to collect evidence, but as long as I got these rotten, corrupt, racist, evil, sick people in me and my son's life, I will collect evidence and prove what I'm saying. But that's why I said the Pledge of Allegiance, I can't do it. I'm not going to stand up for it. I'm not going to say it. I don't give a darn who don't understand it and who's in denial, because this country is full of people in denial, especially about racism. And then part of it is ignorance, because there's a lot of people that benefit from racism. I'm talking about white people now, and they don't really even understand it. And they don't understand it comparing the words, as well as not understanding how it works. But if you look at the suffix of ism, you see that racism has the ISM at the end. So you know you're talking about a systemic process. And then if you look at the word racist, which means an individual, then you can see that there is a difference between the word racist and racism. But you'd be surprised how many people confuse those and don't understand them. And it's really, really simple, because America, or the United States, has always been a racist, or a country that practiced racism from 1776. It's always been a country that did a lot of things based on the race of that individual. Who was a slave, who wasn't a slave, who's able to do this and who isn't, who's able to drink from a water fountain up in this location versus that location. So it's always been a very racist country. But like I said, there's a lot of people in denial about it, and I don't care. They're in denial about my son being abused and neglected and exploited. They accuse me of escalating my son, which is a lie, because what he's doing is venting to me, not because of me. And if you were mistreated and thrown in sensory overload and been restrained and beaten on your head and assaulted, you vent to your mother too. And he has a right to do that. And I said, to my son, I said, well, maybe if they didn't treat my son like an animal when I would come and visit him, then he would be able to tell me some good things like, oh, Mom, I had a cool day and stuff. He has never told me that. He has always, and I got it all recorded, it's all recorded for history. It's all there. Because I don't have to speak for my son, because I forgot to mention my son's autistic, but he's high functioning. So he has a decent vocabulary. He has deficits, but he's able to explain, not really explain, but express his feelings. He can verbalize what happens to him. And I got it all taped. Because, see, they try to attack this black family, and white folks always have tried to do that. And I'm not saying all white people are racist. That's the reason why you got some of them out there marching, when there's marches about racism or police brutality or whatever. They're out there marching with Black Lives Matter because they're not in denial. Those white people can admit, look, there's racism that exists in this country, and we're out here marching about it. So they can acknowledge that there's racism in this country. That's why they're out there marching with, black people or other racists or other white people and stuff. They're out there marching for that cause because they're not in denial about racism existing in this country. But I take it further back than that. I say it has always been a problem in this country since the inception of this country on July the 4th, 1776. It's never went any place. And it's not going to go any place when you can't acknowledge that you have a problem, especially when people don't understand it. But they have always attacked the black family. So they have always, it's their sick fantasy to try to make me and my son dysfunctional and to drive a wedge between me and my son's family bond. I said, now that's sick. But when you're racist and evil like that, you'll do sick things. And God is not happy because he designed a family. But they have always attacked the black family. And I doubt if I could be a practicing registered nurse for almost 31 years now if I was somebody that abused and neglected my son. I'm not on any abuse registries. I'm not on any neglect registries. And I'm not going to be on any. But speaking now about the abuse and neglect and mistreatment of your son is not abusing him or neglecting him. It's advocating for him. Speaking out about the abuse and neglect and mistreatment of your disabled son by others is is not something that you should penalize, or and that's what basically what it is, or retaliate against a parent for. Because a lot of this stuff needs to be exposed and reported. And I know, because my son ain't going through what he's going through because God thinks he deserves it. Because my son is disabled. He's autistic. He's not a criminal. I said, but even these criminals or these inmates in prisons, they get phone calls from the family, they get visits and stuff like that. And he can't see his own mother. Now, God will take care of this situation. Because I mean, God can tell you things in dreams and reveal things to you and stuff. And he said, it's already handled. That's the reason why I don't call Sanford anymore. I think John Mashburn, used to be called Mashburn Law Office. And she was with them for years, but I think he kicked her to the curb. And she never was a partner with Mashburn, but he has changed his law office practice because he's corrupt too. He's one of them fraudians that collect hundreds of dollars off of these wards. But he done changed his name to Mashburn and McGowan, and she done went over there to the Nye Law Group. So that's who she practiced with now. But God said it's already handled. He said, don't call that evil woman no more. Don't call none of them. Because I already got this thing handled. Because he ain't going through, he said, you're right. He ain't going through what he's going through because he deserves it. He said, but I'll use people that other people count out in this world. And I'll take this thing and make it the way I want to make it. I'm going to if I want him home, I'm going to bring him home. And they ain't going to be able to stop that. And his life is in my hands, and so is yours, and so is theirs. Because God can take your enemies and make them your footstool. And the Bible said they'll see, that say you make your enemy see him fill your cup up. So God is in control. But he said, don't worry about calling that evil, sick woman anymore. Because I already got a handle. If I want him to be home, he coming home. Ain't nothing she can do about it. And I put the primary blame on her now because she is his so-called guardian. I call him fraudian. Because they don't care nothing about Marquise. I said, anytime you won't even let him see his own mother, a loving, supportive mother. And like I said, I got tapes of my son expressing how he's been abused, neglected, how much he loves me, how much he misses me, how much he wants to go home and stuff. It's all there. And God's going to punish these people like he did David Blinken. He was so upset with this corrupt, unfit, lying attorney by the name of David Blinken, he took him off the planet and made sure I knew about it by making me get a newspaper and seeing this man's name in the obituary that day. Excuse me. I got a little bit of a cold, but... So, that's why I don't even attempt to call Sanford anymore. Because when I was calling her, it was always... Because all that's in my records, she ain't here, or she meeting with another client, or could you leave something in the voicemail? Then the voicemail got where you couldn't leave anything in the voicemail, so I think she got kicked by John Mashburn to the curb, and then she went over there to the Nye Law Group. But she's a very evil, racist guardian. But like I said, the book of Proverbs and Psalms, and throughout the Bible, talk about people like Sanford. And I said, it ain't pretty. But anytime, you got the book of Proverbs talking about there are people that take cruel advantage of poor, needy people, and that's the way they make their living. That's sad. That's just pure scum. And that's why I said now, to me, they're government trash. But I know Jesus died for Sanford like he died for me and everybody else. And so she has a chance to get saved so she don't have to bust hell wide open, just like anybody else. So that's what I will say about that. I don't care what anybody has done. Jesus went to the cross for them. And they have a chance at redemption and salvation. But other than that, I don't call people names. I just describe them. I describe who they are and what they are as people. I don't have to have any judgment on anybody because I'm not going to have people standing in front of me. That's Jesus on the throne. But that's what he is talking about. She is who he's talking about. And other lawyers and attorneys and judges and court personnel. That's the kind of scum that he's talking about when he talks about all the things. And I've read the Bible 3 times all the way through. And like I said, God hates any type of sin, but you wouldn't believe how much there is about injustice in the Bible and how angry God is with it. So they love to separate that black family. But my life, and the Lord said, not only his life, your life is in my hands. And don't worry about it. If I want him to come back home, he come back home. When I say he's coming back home and how he's going to come back home. And he told me, he said, just pray for him because they're going to need it. But the Lord let me know. But when David Belinkie was talking to me, I knew God was going to punish him because God hates arrogance. And this man was very prideful. And he was bragging about being abusive and running over people in court. And he thought he was, like, he couldn't be stopped. He was all powerful and, you know, and there was just, I didn't know at the time what it was, but it was just like a burning hot anger that was over the conversation. And it wasn't from me, and it wasn't towards me, but I felt it. But now I know it was the wrath of God. That while this man was talking and bragging about himself, he was even bragging on his wife and stuff, but mostly about him, and bragging about being, you know, unethical and like he said, I got a big mouth, I run over people in court and stuff. God was so angry, but within a year he was dead and gone, died unexpectedly at home. So I got 3 pages on Facebook, and the first one is called The Abuse and Neglect of Autistic Marquise Tanksley by the Government. The second one is Justice for Autistic Marquise Tanksley, and the third one is the audio tapes of Marquise Tanksley, his suffering, abuse, and neglect. And that's the most recent one. And I'm actually putting the recordings of Marquise on that page that you can hear him in his own words describe how much he misses me and loves me. Him actually describing abuse. He's telling me he's been restrained, hit on the head, this staff member hitting, that resident hitting, that particular, and there was quite a few staff members that he names. He names their names. Nothing was done about it, swept under the rug. And he also, you know, would tell me how noisy the unit was, how he was afraid, and so he described being terrorized and traumatized, and then I would go over there and see him terrorized and traumatized. One time I found my son hiding in the closet, and there's times I would go over there and his head would be all covered up. And he was afraid to peek out. He was trying to shut out the environment, shut out the noise. And he did Robert's out there, a staff member named Robert, that had abused him and threw him on the floor and punched him. He said he was out there. He had his head covered up then. Said he had been treating him mean. I even got on the audio tape a guy named Robert who was MR, mentally retarded, but he was kind of like higher level, and he even told me he seen my son being abused and neglected by a staff member. I even seen with my own eyes a thug punch Marquise in the chest. That was set up by God. God didn't even know I was standing there where I could see him. I wasn't standing next to Marquise, but I was standing in the perfect spot where I could see him and he couldn't see me. And you could hear him deny on tape when I said, "Oh, you hit him." "Oh, no, I punched." He said, "No, I grabbed him by the shirt." He didn't admit that he punched him in the chest, but he did, and he wasn't going to admit that, but he did admit that he did grab him by the shirt, which is assault in itself if it's unwanted. And but I've actually seen him punch my son in the chest and then grabbed him by his shirt and threw him in the van and stuff. All on audio tape, all evidence. So on these pages, you'll see a lot of evidence too. And I always tell people, just start from when I first created them. Don't start from the most recent post. Start from when I first created them, and you will see that I am not full of hot air. It ain't just my imagination. I'm not all delusional and having hallucinations, and neither is my son. This stuff is stuff we have lived, and God's got it, because Marquise is going to live the life that the Lord wants him to live. His calling that he has on his life, and I believe on my life, will be done. And the Bible tells us that people can make all the plans they want, but it's God's will that will be done. And Seifert might they might plan on keeping him in the system for the federal monies for the rest of his life, but God's will be done in his life. And I will tell people, watch it when you mess with a Christian, because God deals with people in a lot of different ways. I'm talking about people that he's upset with. I read in the book of Daniel how he turned a high and mighty king by the name of Nebuchadnezzar, turned him into the Bible said he was driven out of the palace, had to live as a wild animal for 7 years, that he was out there in the fields and he ate like a wild animal. He had feathers and claws, and he was there for 7 years until he admitted that God was the tops, and then the Lord let him go back into the palace. But this man was out there. It's in Daniel, I think, chapter 5 or 6 or 7, one of them. But but then sometimes God will just put your light out, like he did David Blinken, just take you right off the planet, or somebody just move you aside, humble you and stuff. But you're not going to stand in God's way and his will for nothing. Nobody's going to stop the rapture when it's time for the Christians to be up and out of the world. When Jesus comes and snatches, we're gone. Ain't nobody going to stop that. And that's what he said. Nobody, when it's time for Marquise to come back home, he's coming back home. Nobody's going to be able to stop that. And he said, don't forget, I'm with him. I'm with him. I know things you don't know. I've seen his suffering. I know how you feel as a mother. A mother's love for their child. He said, I got this thing handled. He said, just pray for him. He said, because when I bust this thing wide open, I'm going to bust it wide open. He said, you making a little bit of awareness of it, but not like I can do it. Because when God busted open, he busted open. But when he wants something done, he knows how to deal with people. I don't care if it's people, governments, lawyers, judges, agencies, nations, whatever it is, presidents, God is on top. So I thought I would make this audio video. I will continue with the audio videos, or actually the actual recordings of my son. They go all the way up to the last time that Marquise was allowed to call me, which I said was a few months ago, May the 13th, 2017. And right now I'm still in 2012. So I got many, 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 many more recordings of my son to post. And I always put a narrative with them. I just don't upload the recording, because actually all his conversations with me are taped. I got a lot of tapes of the staff. That's why I say nobody can accuse me of slander or say that I am lying about anything, because I got the evidence. I got pictures, I got recordings, I got documents. But I take the recordings and I listen to them, and they're painful, because I'm reliving the pain of my son telling me and seeing. I go in there and I could see that he was abused and neglected. He had unexplained new injuries and scars, and and it's just awful. Like I said, I'm a victim as a mother, because I say no parent would want to see their child the way I've seen Marquise, or seen him hit in the chest, or come in there over and over again to see signs of abuse and neglect, and then hearing him, and it's just ripping my heart open, hearing, the suffering, how they're abusing him and neglecting him. Ain't nobody want to hear that. But ain't none of that scum, none of that racist trash. And like I said, it's racist, because anytime you told, I said, so when these white, and bless their heart, but when these white individuals with autism are having meltdowns at home or aggression, who's to blame for that? Because they blame me for Marquise. Like when his name is Marquise, my son. But when he would have aggression or meltdowns or what, I was blamed for that. So I said, well, so who are they blaming when these white autistic individuals are having their behaviors? Because I would go to autism websites and message boards and threads and read, a lot of stuff. When my son was first diagnosed with autism, and I didn't know that much about it, so I was educating myself and going all kind of just reading everything that I could read. And so I would go to a lot of message boards and threads, and they had categories about a lot of different things that were related to autism, and from meds to treatments to education to day-in doctors and other therapies that you can. So I would read all of that stuff, and some of those autistic individuals were so severe where they had to wear helmets because they were headbangers and they were injured themselves and banged their heads or that sort of thing. And some of the parents were also writing how they were getting injured by their individuals or their son and daughters with autism. Sometimes the siblings too. And they were just described, they had bites and, black eyes and scratches from when they were dealing with their sons and daughters when they were having meltdowns and stuff. But they never wrote, and they said we're up there escalating them. But that was because I'm black. And white people don't, racist white people can't take that from black people. That's a bitter pill for them to swallow when you come in there and speak up and say this is not right. Your staff is doing this. Your staff is not trained, or they don't know how to work with them, or they're abusing, neglect. They don't want to hear that from no black person. They really don't want to hear too much from a white person, but they can take it and accept it from a white person more than a black person. So then they had to try to, mess with my character. Now, they couldn't say I'm a whore and that I'm uneducated and I'm on welfare and I'm a criminal and, I'm an addict and all this kind of stuff. So all they said, she escalates her son and daughter, or she escalates her son. But if you listen to these recordings of my son, you won't hear him saying, Mom, get out of here, or I hate you and stuff. But you will hear him telling me how he's been abused and neglected and how much he wants to go home and to get him out of there and the place up. That's what you'll hear. And you'll hear it over and over again, hundreds of times, because I record it all the time. He's always said that to me. Mom, get me out of here. I love you. I miss you. And he hit me on my head and stuff. And he wasn't quiet about it. I said, these idiots think that he's supposed to be saying, Mom, will you please get me out of here? When you're upset and you got a disability, he would be yelling, Mom, get me out of here. I miss you. And, I want to see your face and stuff like that. And they thought that he's supposed to be calm and stuff. And that when I showed up, he was supposed to all of a sudden be quiet. And like I said, they're very, very corrupt and evil. But you wouldn't believe their incompetence. I have yet to see anybody that knew how to work with my son. Except for maybe a couple of elementary school teachers. The rest of them, they didn't know how to approach him. They didn't know, had any kind of training about how to work with and the different type of things that you need to know about autism. And I even gave the so-called State Facility Developmental Center, ICFMR facility, a list of Marquise's triggers. And when I offered to the girl, Amanda Kelly, she looked at me like I was crazy. I said, well, he's autistic. He's not mentally retarded, which are two different things. And I said, you need to know his triggers. His staff needs to know. Anybody working with him needs to know what could trigger my son. Like weather, sounds, all that kind of stuff. She looked at me like I was crazy. I said, well, how in the world are you going to successfully work with him? You don't know his triggers. So, ain't no scum that's on this planet that's in support of them people, from the governor or from anybody in the DD field, anybody in the government, doctor, anybody can sit up and tell me what I ain't lived and what I haven't seen. But the incompetence is about as bad as the corruption. But that's all they could say, and that was false. So they came up with, that was their secret fantasy, to try to drive a wedge. I said, well, when he's venting to me, not because of me. He's not saying, Mom, I hate you, get on out of here. He's telling me to get him out of that place because of all the hell they put him through. I said, maybe y'all didn't treat my son like an animal. Maybe he wouldn't have to tell me this. Maybe if you didn't have staff beating on him and assaulting him, maybe he wouldn't be so upset. I said, but they're not going to speak for my son, so that's why I got the audio tape page. And I title it, The Audio Tapes of Marquise Tanksy Suffering Abuse and Neglect. And, I said, I know they're retaliating. Lord said, don't even worry about it. Because I'm in control. And if I want him home, he going to come home. When I say he going to come home, and how, I already got a handle. I don't have to sit up and think about how I'm going to deal with these people. I got it handled. He said, pray for him. He said, but when the day comes, he out of there. And they're going to see it, and the whole world going to see it. And that's why I said, the Lord going to get the praise, honor, and glory. But that's the kind of scum these people are. And I'll tell any of them. I said, go into Proverbs chapter 30, verse 14. And I like my Good News Bible. I like the Today's English version. Because I read the Bible 3 times all the way through. The first 2 times, I used the King James Version. And then the third time, I used this Today's English Version. And I haven't, excuse me, read every interpretation or every version of the Bible. I read a few, but out of the ones I have read, I think everybody has read the King James Version. I like this Good News Bible. And it'll say Good News Bible, but the version is actually, or the interpretation is actually Today's English Version. And I just love it. I just love reading it and stuff. And that's why I'll tell people, you go right on over there, look at Proverbs chapter 30, verse 14. And I said, that's sad. That is really sad. But God says, this is God, speaking to us through his word, through the Bible. And God says that's the way these people are. They take a cruel advantage of poor and needy people. And I ain't talking about people that are lazy and don't want to work. I'm talking about people that, because when I went over, because I've been kind of sick. I had a little bit of a cold, but I was able to go over and give some homeless people, some shoes and pair of shoes. And I said, because who am I to not give a darn about them when God has blessed me so much? And some jeans, and I'm thinking about taking some old jackets over there and stuff. And if I see somebody that's standing on the street, I just gave a couple dollars to a guy, that was standing out there with a homeless sign. And I always give him a tract, and I always tell him it's because of Jesus. Not because of Myra Tanksley, but because of Jesus. Just like I pay for that woman's groceries and stuff. So I'm not racist. A lot of people I have helped have been white people. Most of them are the ones, most of the people standing that I have seen out on the corner have been white people, white males, some white females and stuff. And you're supposed to, as a Christian, help other people that are needy. But the way the Bible says, cruel advantage of taking, there are people that take cruel advantage of poor needy people, and then it says that is the way they make their living. That's bad. That's bad. And that's why I said I'm not going to let no scum sit up in my face, especially if I know about them. Now, if I don't know, because I don't know every attorney. I don't know every so-called court-appointed guardian that has to be attorney. They're all over the world, I'm sure. But the ones that I have in my life and my son's life, Sanford can't sit up and tell me nothing. I would tell her, you just need to hush. You're that piece of filth that they talk about in the Bible. because she got him living, and I said I would talk about where they have him living in one of those Section 8 townhomes. Like, if you step in the front door, if you take 10 more steps, you'll be out the back door. That's how small it is. And it's in a crime-ridden, terrible neighborhood. The neighborhood is so bad that they had to install a black metal lock gate around the premises of it. And it's like probably about a total of 8 little tiny townhomes. And they got this black metal gate around it. And it's supposed to be locked. And like a lot of times, and I got pictures of it where the gate has been unlocked. And just down the street, I forgot, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, they had a drive-by shooting, and some kids got shot in the front yard. But if you look at the pictures that I have of it, you'll see that it's actually the state of Ohio bought it. So see how they keep the money all within their little system? And it's actually designed and structured like all the rest of the townhomes in that neighborhood. They're just nothing. They ain't got no room in them. They're nasty looking and everything else. So he's living in poverty while she collects his SSI check, which I think it's about little over $800 a month. So she's taking a cruel advantage of my son, because if you look at him now, I'm not poor and needy, but he's not with me. He in the system. In the system, he's poor and needy. And she's taking a cruel advantage of that, and that's how she's making her living. Now, she might be in private practice too, but she's getting his paycheck, or not paycheck, but his SSI check, because that's what he's living in. Probably don't cost no more than $200 a month. He ain't got no cable TV. He used to tell me when we would talk on the phone, he would tell me that he hardly had no food. He only had 1 meal a day to eat. And I said, 1 meal a day? He said, yeah, I'm not that hungry, because I guess, he used to saying that to the staff. But when my son was at home, he used to eat 3 meals a day and a snack. But now all of a sudden it's 1 meal a day. And then I said, is there any food? He said, no, we're kind of low in food. Then one time he said all he had was water to drink. Now this woman's getting $800 a month, making her living off of SSI checks. And he probably living in a $150 subsidized or $200 subsidized little tiny nasty Section 8 townhome that the state of Ohio done bought. Hardly ain't got no food. They probably ain't buying no clothes. So that's what the Bible says. That's why I said, if I seen that woman, and I said, it's only been God that had told me, he said, you don't call her anymore. But I said, you just filth. It would be just like looking at a legalized criminal or a criminal. I said, that shouldn't even be legalized, what they do. It's just like looking, I said, you know no better than these criminals out in the street. None of you are. But that's where he lives. He lives in a terrible neighborhood that they had to put a gate around it. And you should see all the trash around it, and then they don't take the trash out. The staff don't. And then I've seen staff there. You never see the same people going over there. Guys sitting on the steps, smoking. I said, and that's what, my son is suffering through. But it's all on tape. Marquise describes the abuse to his mother. He describes, his longing for, to be back home. Because he adores me. He misses his mother. But they're trying to get him to forget about his mother and break up our family. I said, that's why I said, no, I'm not going to stand up for it. I'm not going to stand up and say life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness and justice and for all and all that. I said, because it's a lie. It's a great big lie, and I'm not going to stand up for it. For the people that I said, like I told this one Native African guy, he said, well, I came over here, I got married. I said, well, then you stand up for the flag and salute it. If that's been your experience here, then you do it. I'm not mad at you. Because I know some people do have a wonderful life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness experience here in America. The American dream. I said, but a lot of people haven't. And it's been that way since 1776. And I said, I'm not going to just put blinders on and just deny the truth. And I don't care who doesn't understand it. I said, but that's been your experience. Then you stand up and salute the flag. I said, I can't do it. I said, because God be for me and my son. But I used to always say, yeah, my son's suffering. But like I said, I'm a victim in this thing too. I said, my family rights and motherhood rights have been trampled on. I said, anytime you can't see your own son, and you've been a loving, supportive mother that ain't afraid to challenge the system, as a Christian, I'm not afraid to challenge it and to expose it because it needs to be exposed. And then you got to be lied on and slander and say you escalate your son and they don't want you to have contact. But that's Sanford doing that and all of that. She done lied on me something terrible. She should be disbarred. And I wrote the Ohio Supreme Court Disciplinary Council, and they just completely ignored that part. Because I told them about how she was neglecting and abusing my son as his fraudian. But I also told them that she was a pathological liar and that I had the evidence. Wouldn't even acknowledge it. But all them scum, they all friends and network and all part of the system and stuff. Like Mike DeWine, here he is, that idiot's running for governor. He's a corrupt attorney general. The state of Ohio, all you do is go to the Facebook pages, you'll see the cover pages and see the people that I name. And I had told, for the people's wondering, like, have you, told anybody about it or contacted honey from all the way from the White House on down. Barack Obama when he was president, and I wrote Trump and told them about it. Senators, Portman, Sherrod Brown, one woman even told me to write Bernie Sanders. I done wrote all kind of media and everything else. But God is going to be the one to get the glory when he brings Marquise home. Because ain't nobody helped us. I even had a crooked lawyer that's now a judge appointed by the state of Ohio filed a lawsuit. It was so messed up, but she betrayed me and Marquise and refused to follow through with it. Lied to me and said that she was going to refile it and didn't. The next thing you know, she ran for judge, very ambitious lawyer named Jill Flagg. And she got defeated twice in a row, 2 years in a row, by the incumbents. But when they had a judge retire in the state of Ohio, went ahead and appointed her. So she should be happy now. But she's corrupt too. Her name is Jill Flagg. But, and this has been going on several years. So I got a story to tell. Excuse me. I get a drink of water here. And 2018 is going to be a mighty, mighty year in the Lord. And God will have his way in this situation, any situation. But especially with a Christian, because I done placed it all at the cross. And it's at the tomb. Because Jesus is alive and well, and he said, step back, know that I'm God, be still, I got a handle. He said, just get ready for what I got in store for you and Marquise, because I'm going to use him the way I want to use him. He said, it ain't up for Sanford to decide how your son is going to live. And when you're going to see him again, when you're going to live with him again, that's up to me. He said, all you have to do is believe and step back and watch me do what I said I was going to do. And I don't really like, and I'll tell people, God's already got everything handled. The Bible talks about God saying at the appointed time. So God has a time that's appointed when things are to happen. And so I don't really like to say God's timing. I'm going to even say God's appointed time. And God's timing is not like our timing. A year could be 1,000 days. 1,000 days could be a year, the Bible tells us. And also, his ways are different from our ways, and so is his timing is different from our timing. And we try to put God ways and timing on our human thinking, you know. We try to limit God to our human ways of thinking. But his timing and his ways are not the same as ours. But I like to say the appointed time, that God has an appointed time for the rapture. He has an appointed time for um, when Jesus comes back the second time with us. The rapture is not the second coming of Jesus. The rapture is the snatching up of the Christian church. So there are two different events. God had appointed time for Jesus to be born, the appointed time for him to go to the cross, and the appointed time that Jesus told us 3 days later, I'm going to. So God has an appointed time for everything. And it's already handled. There's an appointed time when the Antichrist will be revealed. And so I like to say appointed time. And it just really just, you know, makes me so excited to know that God is in control, that God is with my son. Because as a mother, I worry. He said, don't worry, I'm with your son. I can bless him. I can heal him no matter where he's at. He could be in a den of idiots, or just like Daniel was in a den of lions, and God was with him and closed the mouth of the lions. He said, nobody limits my power. I could do anything, anytime, anywhere. He said, he's with me. He said, but pray for Sanford and them, because they're going to need it. He said, because when I bust it over, I'm going to bust it open. But he coming home, and he going to come home when I say he's coming home and win, and nobody will be able to stop that. So at the appointed time, my son will be back home, just like the appointed time for anything else that God has decided that he wants to do. He has his own time when he's going to do it. But I like the way he says the appointed time. Appointed time. So that means God's already got it appointed when he's going to do it. I don't care what year, what date, what, down to the very last second is his appointed time. So that, it just, you know, I'm, you know, missing my son, think about him each and every single day, but I lift up prayer, and I also lift up praises that God's going to settle this thing, and that he's in control, and that because of him, I could face tomorrow, and Marquise could face tomorrow. Because of him, at the appointed time, Marquise is coming back home. And yes, you can call that faith, because faith is seeing the invisible, believing the impossible, and receiving the incredible. And it'll take God to put down this army of these people that take a cruel advantage of the poor and needy, and that's the way they make their living. It'll take God that they get rid of the corrupt courts and judges. And in the book of Amos, chapter 5, verses 7, verse 10, where the Bible tells us that God tells these corrupt, evil people in the illegal system, you are doomed, because you hate anybody that speaks out the truth in court, and people that speak out against injustice. Like I said, injustice is just all through the Bible. I mean, you can see it in the major books of the prophets. You can see it in the minor prophets, the book of Psalms, like I said, Proverbs. There's injustice. Jesus talks about injustice. I mean, it's all through the Bible. So for somebody to try to come to me and say no, or Sanford, or DeWine, or Kasich, or this court investigator, I forgot his name. I got to get his letter, but I'm not going to get it now. But I can't remember his name. Or, you know, just anybody that I got dealing with me and Marquise to try to come and tell me that and stuff, I'm going to hit them with scripture and tell them to just go on and save your breath. I said, because you are talked about, you know, in the Bible, just like any other sin. And you want to try to say you're ethical, and you're not. But I missed my son on Merry Jesusmas on Christmas Day. I say Jesusmas Day, but Jesusmas means Christmas to me. And I'm not going to be able to bring in the new year, but the new year is going to be okay for me and Marquise. God's going to show Himself strong and proud in this situation, because I've just been waiting to see it. You know, I've just been waiting to see it. I'm just waiting for you to bring back home. You know, because I like to talk about Jesus anyway. And Jesus just died in the flesh. He was the Word made flesh. In the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So when I say God, I'm talking about Jesus too, because God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are one and equal. Hallelujah. But, but I'm just waiting. I'm just looking forward to, because He's done blessed me so much. The Lord, God has been so good to me in everything and stuff. But He knows that this mother's heart is yearning for her son. And He said, I got it handled. Because He said, you done all you could do. And, and there are things only God can do, that only God can put down. But He will use people. And my son's like a nobody to them. He's disabled. He's a black male. He's just a cash cow for the federal funds. And I contacted federal government and different agencies and stuff. So he's nothing. But that's the kind of people that God used. And I'm just looking forward to seeing more miracles from God of how He does things. So I'm going to wish everybody, I hope they had a Merry, Merry Jesusmas, and I'm going to wish them a blessed, happy 2018. Jesus is Lord. And I love you, Marquise. I missed you on Jesusmas Day, and I wish I could bring in 2018 with you. But you hang on in there, because God's got this handle. And at the appointed time, you will be coming back to join your mother, at home, where you could live the life the Lord wants you to live. And you'll be used mightily. God's going to use what you've been through to help other people. I really believe that. And I'm going to be right there beside you. So happy, blessed 2018 to my son. And I thank you for listening. And go to the pages. Remember, start at the beginning of the page when I first created, not the most recent post. And look for some more audio videos. They will be coming. I'm still in 2012, but I got all the way up to 216 to go. And they're just the actual recordings of Marquise, letting people hear what he's been through and stuff. But God knows more than anybody else. And God is going to come down and do something about it. Say enough is enough. But like I said, at the appointed time. Everybody have a happy, happy, blessed 2018. And thank you for listening.